Fearless Females Voice podcast, where women's stories and experiences are shared in order to empower and inspire others. Before we begin the podcast, I wanted to let you know that there is a free Becoming Fearless test on my website, which will take less than 5 minutes to complete. The test will show you how fearless you are and give you some great tips and techniques at the end to help you improve your score. You can check it out on www.fearlessfemales.me. On this episode, I am joined by Tracy, who has an extremely powerful story. Tracy was living her best life in her 20s with a great job, a partner, and her whole life ahead of her. Then her world took a turn for the worse. Tracy was diagnosed with cervical cancer at the age of 30 and had to undergo treatment and surgery. Her insurance company was not willing to pay for her fertility preservation treatment, so she was left knowing that she would be unable to have children in the future. Tracy now works for an incredible charity called Chick Mission, where they help other female cancer patients to fund their fertility preservation treatment so that they have a chance of having children in the future. I found this episode truly inspiring, and Tracy talks to us openly about her cancer journey, what she was going through, her main challenges, how she maintained her mindset, and her determination and drive to help other women. Tracy is one badass woman who has had difficult times and yet come out of it strong and wanting to make change in the world for other women, which she is doing. I can't wait for you to listen to this powerful episode. So without further ado, let's get stuck in. What does being a fearless female mean to you?
Being a fearless female is authenticity. It's knowing yourself and always being true to that kind of inner core that makes you you. I think there's so many opportunities in life to just kind of go with the flow and not make waves. But when you are living the version of yourself, that's the true version of yourself, that's fearless. It doesn't always make you popular. It doesn't always make you monetarily successful. It doesn't always, there's things that we qualify and quantify our lives are supposed to be. But I think that if you are living fearlessly, you're just the best version of yourself 100% of the time.
I love that. And I completely agree with that. And I know that you've been through a lot in your life, and there's many things that challenges that you've had to overcome to get to where you are now and do all the great things that you're doing now. So can you take us back to roughly at the age of 30 and talk us through what exactly happened and how you got to where you're at now?
Absolutely. I grew up in the Midwest of the United States, which is exactly what you see on TV, strip malls and little houses that look all the same. And I never felt like that fit me. So when I was in my early 20s, I moved to New York City and started working in media. And on paper, my life was everything it was supposed to be. I was newly married. I was a talent agent working in television, representing, hosts and trying to find them gigs. I was climbing the corporate ladder, making great money. And, it seemed like everything was gelling. I was living in the place I was supposed to live, doing the thing I was supposed to do. And kind of out of nowhere, I was diagnosed with uterine and cervical cancer at 30. No children, just kind of finding my way in my then relationship. And it was shocking. Everything I seemed to know about the path I'd set and the future I would live was completely rocked. I was lucky in a way that I was able to have a hysterectomy and a lymphodectomy, meaning that they removed all the lymph nodes that were affected by the cancer and kind of move on with my life. In doing that, something I was shocked to find out is that insurance companies did not pay for fertility preservation. And they do so because they deem it elective. And I couldn't believe that I was diagnosed with a pretty large tumor at a very young age, where they were going to remove my uterus, therefore I would be infertile. And it was deemed elective, as if anyone would elect to be sick, elect to have a tumor, elect to have a hysterectomy at age 30. And that didn't sit well with me. I didn't really know what to do about it. I was very lucky that I received some financial assistance from a program, put the rest on a credit card, and, went in to, kind of fight for my life cancer wise. And I spent several years just kind of, pardon my language, like really, really frigging angry about that experience. And I went back to work, and something I'm sure you can relate to, that life didn't fit me anymore. Media didn't seem as exciting. The opportunities didn't seem important anymore. So I left my job, and I spent a lot of years soul searching and finding out, what I was supposed to do with this experience. And what I figured out is the thing that made the cancer experience, I just kind of like marinated, and the way I worked through it was by helping other people. And that led me to helping found the Chick Mission, an organization that helps women preserve their fertility before they go through cancer treatment. So they're able to make the choice of what they want their future to look like before their bodies and this disease makes the choice for them.
I love that. And
it's a long-winded answer. It's a long-winded answer.
As I said, I know you've been through a lot in your own journey to get to where you're at now. And I wanted to take it back to that defining moment of when you found out that you were diagnosed with cancer, because as a 20-year-old, I'm currently 31, and it's not on my radar, something that I don't even really think about. Know many people who have experienced that at this age. And as a 20-year-old, you were saying in your 20s, you got married, you had everything looking bright for the future. And this one moment just completely turned your life around. Can you tell me what it was like hearing that news? What was it like at that exact moment of finding out?
Yeah, I got a phone call from my doctor that she wanted me to come into the office, which is never a good sign, especially in New York City. If a doctor wants to see you not in the exam room and sit down and have a conversation, it's a little worrisome. Honestly, I am a very positive person, and part of me thought that maybe she was going to tell me I was pregnant, like there was like going to be good news. There was going to be something wonderful. But I was scared, and I will never forget, I dressed beautifully that day. Pencil skirt, blouse, high heels, because it got my hair blown out. In my head, you couldn't hear bad news, when you were just coiffed and gorgeous and glamorous, which my life was gorgeous and glamorous. And I sat down, and she told me that I had cancer. And I heard like a whooshing in my ears, like almost dizzy. And I said, like, actual cancer? Is it just like basal cells, or, we all know about, HPV, maybe there was something like that was like pre-cancer. And she's like, no, you have cancer, and we're not sure, how far it's advanced. And I remember thinking, well, can I have a baby first? Which was shocking, because I had never really decided how I wanted to parent, if I wanted to parent. But I just remember being so fearful in that moment for my life, realizing my own mortality. Would I be able to have children? I know this is honest, but it's vain. Would I lose my hair? Would I look sick? What would my parents think? What would my spouse think? And unfortunately, I did know someone who had cancer and died at 19 years old. So I was terrified. And she wrote down a list of oncologists and doctors that I should make appointments with from there. And actually, this regular OBGYN who I had seen for the first time when I went in with some concerns, who diagnosed my cancer, she was the fourth doctor I had seen about this issue. And it was the first time I had ever seen her. And that doctor called me every week for 6 months just to make sure that I was okay. Did I have any questions? She was about my age. And that is above and beyond the scope of regular care in the States. So I felt very lucky that I had someone to kind of shepherd me through what came next when you are told you had cancer. And I was alone in the office and I just didn't know what to do. I didn't know who to call first. But I got in a cab and started that next chapter of my life, whether it was making doctor's appointments, sharing the news with my family. I never looked sick. So I continued to go to work every day until I couldn't, and just decided that this cancer diagnosis was not going to define me. It wasn't going to make decisions for me. And I was going to fight and I was going to win.
That's a really, really great mindset to have, hearing such difficult news. How is it that you maintain this positive mindset throughout? Because that's your body will be going through so many things. The people around you will be going through. You're going through so much. It can be difficult to maintain that, right? The right mindset, the positive mindset, the survival mindset. How is it that you cultivated that?
I think I am someone who I need to have all the information in front of me. So I was just gathering information. I had several biopsies, I had scans, I had a couple of small procedures. And that was just gathering information of finding out, if the cancer had spread, how badly. And once I gathered all that information, we had an action plan of my treatment. And that's when you panic. You panic when you know what's coming next. For me, sounds so self-serving, but I was worried about my friends and family. I never wanted to show them how scared I was. I wanted them to, be as confident as I was that this was going to be a short chapter in a hopefully very, very long life. And I guess it's also just a little bit of stubbornness that I was unwilling to accept any other kind of outcome. It also helped that I wasn't in pain until I had my surgery. Do you know what I mean? Like, I didn't have a mastectomy. I just was able to kind of remain in this in-between place until it was time to take action. And you can't panic in the in-between place because nothing's been decided yet. And that was how I just managed to keep myself positive. Also, I have a very dark, awful sense of humor. And so I just was able to find certain things amusing to make myself feel more comfortable in the uncomfortableness.
Makes sense. And how did your family and friends receive the news?
Oh, poorly. I ended up having to take care of that most of the time. My mother was an absolute mess. I would not allow her to come to New York on the surgery day because I knew she was just going to make everyone crazy. My best friend, I was diagnosed in October. And she went out and got breast cancer awareness cupcakes and was like, I know you don't have breast cancer, but this is the best I could do. We drank a lot of wine. We ate a lot of pasta. It just kind of was prepping me for, the complete and utter helplessness that comes after surgery. So in the weeks and months leading up to my my hysterectomy, and I was a 9-hour surgery.
Wow.
We just kept positive. We had dinner parties. I had to make sure everyone knew where the passwords were to my email inbox in case something happened to me that they could delete all the terrible things I said about my boss. And post-surgery, I had a lot of visitors. We colored in dirty adult coloring books. We watched a lot of TV. I had a lot of cocktail parties in my bed. My girlfriends would come over and drink wine, and I would just be, I was laid up for a solid 6 weeks.
Wow.
They would push me around in an office chair when I didn't want to walk from one small room in a flat to another small room in a flat. But I was lucky. I am someone who my friends are my family, and they all showed up.
That's just what you need for times like that. And it sounds like you have a great support network around you as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And everyone understood that we weren't feeling sorry for me. We weren't feeling sorry for ourselves. We weren't talking about the worst case scenario. And
Yeah.
the night before my surgery, each of my girlfriends from grammar school wrote me a letter. And that allowed me to stay positive, knowing how important I am to so many people.
That strength from everyone else, it must have contributed to your own strength, right? All the happiness, the
Ab-
positivity, the strength.
Absolutely. And I think that we talk about fearless, and that's allowing yourself to be vulnerable. And it was the first time in my life that I had to allow people to help me. I had to allow people to help me take a shower, help me put on a new pair of pajamas. I love to cook. I cook for everyone. I had to allow people to do that for me. And my tribe, my community, they understood that we were approaching this from a place of strength, of humor, of, inappropriateness, and their willingness to do it my way made me feel even more comfortable in a body that frankly betrayed me. It was a very interesting time, especially, you're 31. Everyone is going through transitions and figuring out who they're going to be when they grow up. Whether it's career or motherhood or, geographically where you live. I always find like 30 is that betwixt and between of, who you were and that next stage of your life.
I agree. I mean, I made a lot of changes when I was 30. I had a lot of realizations in my life as well. So I can completely relate to that. And you mentioned that after your surgery, I know this situation happened with the insurance company. There was anger that you felt for a certain period of time. Can you tell me more about your post-surgery mental and physical recovery? What was that like?
Wow. It was a very long process. I'm not a patient woman. So my doctors told me that I needed to be out of the office for 10 weeks. I went back after 6 because I wasn't willing to let cancer derail my life. But what I realized very quickly is the same life didn't fit. It was like wearing a dress that was someone else's, and it didn't sit right. It didn't feel right. I went back to work in March. By June, I quit my job. I just knew that I did not want to spend, we all have a certain amount of days, right? We don't know. All of us are dying every day. Do you have 2 months? Do you have 2 years? Do you have 2 decades? There's no way to know. So I knew that I didn't want my life to be sitting behind a cubicle working on behalf of other people's careers. So that was the first change I made. I had no idea what I wanted to do, but I knew it was not that. For 6 months, quite frankly, I was in a daze. If you ask me what I did that first year after I left the talent agency, I barely know. I took cooking classes. I took wine classes thinking I wanted to work in the food space because that was my passion. I started visiting friends and family. I really immersed myself in the Tracyness of it all. And that really helped my mental state and also helped me process that I was 31 years old and a cancer survivor. I'd only known one other person who had cancer and she died. Actually, the day of my big surgery was the anniversary of her death. And I just remember thinking, her name was Alex. I was like, Alex wouldn't want me to go out like this. Alex wouldn't want this disease to take me to. So really immersing myself in the Tracyness of it all, friends, family, cooking, new adventures, a little bit of travel, that helped my mental state. My physical state, it's been many, many years and I'm still dealing with some fallout, whether it's I never got my core strength back. I'm still, have to be very careful not to cut up my legs because I could get infections because my lymphatic system isn't as wonderful and as everyone else's is. But it really wasn't until a solid 5 years later that I felt like myself because I had to recreate my life. I had to, recreate the people who were in it, my career, and what my priorities were. my priorities were a big fat paycheck and an ego-driven job before I got sick. And afterwards, I did not care about that.
It is amazing just how much of an awakening moment it sounds like you'd gone through. Because I can again relate to that myself with having the career and thinking of materialistic things, the money, the finances and everything, but actually then realizing and having that moment of being like, right, there's more to life than just that, and following your dreams and passions. And it's that, you said you can't remember exactly what you did in that 6 months to 1 year. That's absolutely fine. That sounds like you're living life. It sounds like you had a great time. You were spending time with your family, your friends, doing all the important things that you enjoy and that are good for you, right?
Yeah. And just being, I was basically taught that there's a path that you take and it's about career and it's about, building. And my house of cards got knocked down. I had to rebuild, but before you rebuild, you have to be on solid foundation. And for me, that was even asking the questions. Yes, facing my own mortality made me have that wake up call about the kind of life I wanted to live and the kind of person I wanted to be. But also taking the time to examine that and just being honest with yourself. If you would have told 25-year-old me that I would have had the career of my dreams and I would have blown it up, I would tell you you're crazy. No way. You work too hard. You struggle. I worked in television 7 days a week, till midnight. Why would you throw all that hard work away in order to be honest with yourself and live a life that fits you? And 10 years later, I'm still figuring that out. I think all of us, continuing to go down an honest, vulnerable, truthful, authentic path allows us to be the best version of yourself. And being that self-reflective is scary. That's another way that fearless, looking in the mirror and figuring out who you actually are, not who your family thinks you are, who your partner thinks you are, what society says you are. Looking in that mirror.
This is it. This is the authentic self that you mentioned about being fearless, right? Not letting external conditioning from a young age, from this age, social media, external influences play a part in who you actually are and being your authentic self. I completely agree. It's a journey, something that I'm going through. I'm 31 myself, and I've had a lot of changes, I said, in the last year and a half. And it's something that we're all going through, no matter what age you're at. It's all about self-development, growing, learning, and being open-minded to it. So I think you're on a good path.
And being brave enough to accept that life doesn't always look like the way you want it to look. And what you do with that is up to you.
Yes, completely agree. So that leads us on to Chick Mission, which I absolutely love, by the way. I just love everything it's about. And I'm going to let you do the talking on it and the honors of sharing how it was founded, what it's about, and I guess how many women lives you've already helped.
Yeah, it's my favorite topic. So where we've left off is I'm angry that my insurance company would not cover my fertility preservation because I didn't elect to have a tumor. So how is it elective to freeze my eggs? Didn't know what to do with that. And I was introduced to a woman named Amanda Rice, who had a big idea. Amanda was diagnosed with cancer 3 times before her 40th birthday. And in the middle of her breast cancer recurrence, her 3rd diagnosis with cancer, she had a bout with melanoma in between her breast cancer experiences, had the same experience where insurance would not cover her fertility preservation. And she decided to do something about it. And she came up with the name Chick Mission and just started meeting kick-ass broads who had either seen cancer through a lens of their own, or through family members, or through the medical community. And I sat down to have lunch with her, and I honestly thought like they were just looking for a donation to get their organization started. But what we figured out is Amanda is a financial genius. Her day job is in finance, so she understands how to raise money. And I'm a weirdo creative, whether it's an event or a social media campaign or an article, that's how my brain works. So we figured out kind of on day one of the Chick Mission that we were the yin to each other's yang. And she finished recruiting the board Our founding board is just a group of women who are unwilling to accept what bureaucracy says. And insurance companies say no, we want a way to say yes. So in 2018, we gave our first Hope Scholarship grant, is what we call the financial award to newly diagnosed cancer patients. We help women between 18 and 40 in 6 states in the United States who are newly diagnosed with cancer. And it's need-based. So you have to make under a certain threshold in order to qualify. And from that day, Valentine's Day, 2018, to today, we have helped 163 patients.
Wow.
So there are 163 women who have taken control of their future fertility, their potential future family, and then went on to, fight cancer, and they'll be able to make decisions about motherhood later. I'm most proud that there are women who sat in that waiting room and women who got the denial from their insurance company. And when you're diagnosed with cancer, you really only have about 3 weeks to go through an IVF cycle and freeze your eggs. You can't wait before surgery, before chemo, before radiation. And it's not the kind of thing where you can start a GoFundMe and come up with $20,000 out of pocket in 3 weeks. There are so many people who struggle with IVF, and I know it is both an enormous dollar commitment and very, very grueling. But imagine doing that on a timetable that's 2.5 weeks. The urgency of it is what I'm most proud of, that you're diagnosed with cancer on Monday. And if you go meet with a reproductive endocrinologist about freezing your eggs on a Thursday, you apply to Chick Mission, you will hear in 72 hours if you qualify.
I was just going to ask about the timeline as well, as to how the patients approach you and how quickly the process works, but that's very quick.
Yep. All of the applications go through our fertility partners. So there are clinics, over 30 of them across the states, who can talk to an onco-fertility patient and say, you have to preserve your fertility. You may qualify for this financial assistance. Here's the application that's filled out together, and they submit it to our organization. And that's the primary thing that we do, but we also host educational events to just allow women to know how their bodies work from a cancer perspective, but also, I always joke that women spend half their lives trying not to get pregnant and the other half trying to get pregnant. So, if you understand a little bit more about how your body works, God forbid you get diagnosed with cancer, you'll know what you need to do, or a friend or a family member, but also just kind of taking control of your own reproductive health of your own body. I didn't know that you're born with every egg you're ever going to have, and that throughout time.
I didn't either. I was just going to say, I don't think we get taught enough of this in school. I know when I was in school, so I'm speaking about a long time ago. I don't know how it is in the UK educational system now, but this is probably something that I would love to know more about myself. I can't say I'm very clued up on it. Is this something that you offer to women online, or is it in face-to-face meets in New York?
We've generally done face-to-face kind of women's group meetings, but in Q4 of this year and in 2022, we're going to be launching more kind of Zoom educational events where we can speak to some of our own medical experts, some women who have had experience, some of our survivors. Just knowledge is power, right? So that's the educational piece. And the third piece of our mission is advocacy. I'm a storyteller. I believe very strongly that the best way for someone to understand the plight of cancer patients is to hear it directly from our mouths. My experience, Amanda Rice's experience, one of our board members, who's our chief medical officer, she herself had a breast cancer diagnosis 1.5 years ago. All the women who volunteer on our PEEPS board, I would say about a quarter of them are also cancer survivors. So let politicians understand that if insurance companies will not pay for this, what does that mean for someone whose ability to have children is taken away from them by cancer, whose side effect from the treatment that will save their life will render them infertile. That the best way to get through to our elected officials is by sharing our stories. So Chick Mission organizes, whether it's advocacy days or participates any way we can, and direct meetings with state representatives and senators, and hopefully someday our federal representatives, to change the law that insurance companies will be forced to pay for fertility preservation for cancer patients.
Wow.
So just to put it in perspective, in the United States, it's less than 100,000 people who are diagnosed with cancer during their childbearing years. So the impact that legislation like this could make is great.
And how is that going with getting this through to your government and actually making changes? Where are you at in that process?
In 2017, there were 0 states that mandated insurance coverage. Now there are 10.
Wow.
The Chick Mission, we were directly involved in New York State, New Jersey, California, Colorado. And part of the reason that I live in Texas part-time is we were trying to get something going in the state of Texas. It did not pass. It didn't even get scheduled for a vote in 2021 because their legislative session ran out of time. It was scheduled on the docket for a vote, but the last day of session came and went, and there was not time for it to be voted on. So I could bore you about Texas, but we won't have another opportunity to have the conversation again until 2023. And you better believe that the Chick Mission will be even more organized with more grassroots advocates, survivors, supporters, and constituents in Texas who want this to be a change.
Wow. Yep. 2023 is the year.
Yeah. And it's one state at a time. Each of these laws must be changed state by state until there's an overall federal mandate. So there's some talk about Washington State in 2022. It's interesting. It's about the political climate. I think it's never been a better time to stand up for women and stand up for cancer patients. So I'm hoping that we have some success.
I agree. And I just find it so incredible and inspiring what you're doing and helping so many women and making a change in the society, in government, in America. It's huge.
Thank you for saying that, because honestly, every day in a global pandemic where we all are socially distant and can't connect, where, the days I feel grief over the fact that I myself will not be able to have a family. The only way to move through any of those feelings fearlessly is by standing up for change to help other people who are in the same position. When you're faced with adversity, you have 2 choices. The first time with my cancer experience, I ate pasta out of a mixing bowl and just decided I was going to be okay. But it wasn't enough. In order to really, really put this adversity behind me, I had to find a way to make it work for other people. And that is the principle that the Chick Mission was founded on. Amanda Rice, a 3-time cancer survivor, rather than be afraid about her own survival, because she knew she would likely be okay. She'd been through this process before. She spent her time in the chemo suite reading Nonprofits for Dummies.
Wow.
And that is what we were founded on. Tenacity and, frankly, an inability to accept no. Because why? Because you say so? Nah.
I love that. And I think it's such a strong message that you're saying for women supporting women, regardless of what you've been through. I think it's so important, and I don't feel that it's done enough of. So the fact that you're making a stand, you're making change, and you're empowering others as well is just incredible. Incredible.
It changes everything. And I think that in a society where women are constantly being told that we're less than, or we have to look a certain way, or we have to act a certain way, I'm loud and I'm going to use my voice for good. And why else did I have this awful experience? There is something really terrible about being such a young woman and having a form of vagina cancer. You know, it changes your whole relationship with your body, with sex, with, you know, even, I know this sounds so old fashioned, but I feel like even my generation, we were told that you're kind of nothing if you don't have kids. You know, it's one of the reasons we're here is to, you know, procreate and keep, you know, life moving forward and, you know, family building. And that's all wonderful, but I can't do those things. This is something I can do and I'm going to do. And the Chick Mission loves to say that we can't wait until we are out of business. We want all 50 states to have insurance mandates, a federal bill. And when every woman gets to make the choice about her own fertility preservation ahead of her cancer treatment, I'm not going to have a job. It's going to be awesome. What am I going to do next for women?
I'm sure there's plenty you can do. There's plenty you can get involved in.
Absolutely. I have a little list on my iPhone of like injustices I see. And someday I'm going to go do that.
And I was actually going to ask if there was one thing or one goal that Chick Mission can complete. I believe you've just said it right there, is that you'd be out of business.
We want to be out of business. We want every woman who's diagnosed with cancer to make her own decision. You want to preserve your fertility? Your insurance should cover that.
I love that. I love that. Tracy, thank you so much for being on this podcast. It's been incredible speaking to you. And I'm so empowered just by hearing your story. It's really, really inspiring.
And thank you for creating a space where, you know, women can talk freely about challenges, fearlessness, and do it in a raw, real way. I think that people are afraid to speak about their feelings on loss, on grief, on depression, on challenges. And for me, the louder I speak about them and the more frequently, the better handle that all of us have on our own issues, and know that we're not alone in it. And knowing that you're not alone in this world is pretty much everything.
I agree. And that's why I created this podcast as well. There's so many women who have benefited just from hearing other women's stories and knowing that they're not the only ones going through this. They're not the only ones experiencing this level of grief or depression, any mental health issues, anything, divorce, abortion, everything. And that's what I want to get across. Yeah, I want to get that across, that we're not alone. That's why I was saying we need to support each other and speak more openly about it and learn from one another.
Absolutely. And, you know, on that topic, if any of your UK listeners want to find a way to get involved, you know, the Chick Mission is not abroad yet, but we do something called the Great Egg Freeze, which raises awareness and also funds. It's a polar bear plunge. So there's no better place to do that than England, except for maybe the Highlands of Scotland, which I have a dream of doing one in the Lochs. But we can always help organize a Great Egg Freeze where women stand up for women diagnosed with cancer and jump in with us to make a splash for change.
I'd love that. And I'll put your the website on the show notes, and also so women can find that. And you can also let me know if there's any other way that women from the UK or anywhere, whoever's listening from anywhere around the world, can get involved as well. Is there anything else? Is there any way that we can get involved?
Yeah, I mean, short term, whether it's Great Egg Freeze or it's letter writing campaigns, or frankly, it's just having the conversation about fertility, about cancer, about change, about not accepting the status quo. Anytime those conversations are normalized, we're building.
Great. Love it. Okay. Thank you so much, Tracy, for coming on and sharing your story. It's been a pleasure.
It's been a pleasure. It's so nice to meet you. Congratulations on your nuptials. And I look forward to this episode and all the future ones of women being badasses.
Yes. Thank you so much for listening to the Fearless Females Voice podcast. Be sure to complete the free Fearless test where you can discover how to increase your confidence, build your resilience, and self-love. You can find this test on my website, which is www.fearlessfemales.me. And to connect with other like-minded females, make sure you join our Facebook group, which is called Fearless Females. Oh, and one last thing. I'd like you to do a massive favor for me. If you enjoyed this episode, then be sure to leave a review on Apple Podcasts. Thank you.